Hello everyone, DJ here. Let's talk about a skill that everyone in the Army National Guard should have, and in the reserve components in general, but today just Army National Guard. In addition to being able to read your Leave and Earnings Statement, or LES, everyone should be able to understand their retirement point statement. This is a long episode, so if you need to, take it in chunks to make it a little easier to comprehend. Don't want to get you drowning in too much information. I know that's easy to happen to me, so let's try to take it in small pieces if you can. And here's a question you might be asking. Why, DJ? I'm just going to be in the National Guard for a few years and then getting out. Why do I need to know how to read this thing? Well, this statement tells you more than just what you'll earn if you make it to 20 years and eligibility for a monthly pension. It also tells you if you're eligible for other types of benefits. There will be a separate episode on these benefits later. For now, let's focus on the retirement and pension side of things. Let me say from the outset that this will be much easier to understand if you have your own point statement in front of you. If you don't have one, be sure to ask your full-time personnel to pull that statement for you. It is also possible that you can find a copy in your electronic personnel record, or IPERMS as it's called in the Army National Guard, or for Army service members in general. There are several different types of versions. That's redundant. There are several versions of the point statement available in the Army Guard. The first one, called NGB Form 23 Alpha, shows not only your retirement points but also an estimate of your retired pay and the number of drills and active duty days you served in the last year. Except for the listing of your drill and active duty activity for the last year, I personally do not like this statement because the pay estimate is based on some assumptions that, in my opinion, are not as accurate as I would like. In fact, sometimes they're quite inflated. The next version, called NGB Form 23 Bravo, is just a statement of your retirement points. I prefer this version the most. If you're familiar with the old show Dragnet, it is the just the facts ma'am version of a point statement. And that is what I'm after here, and what I hope you're after, just the facts. I will also put a link in the episode notes to a handy how to read guide that I believe will be useful to you. I will also be using this guide as I talk. Let me back up. I will also be using this guide in my talk about how to understand your points. If you do not have a copy of your point statement, there's also a link to a sample point statement which you can use alongside this guide as you learn to read the statement and hopefully gain a better understanding of this important document. Let's start from the top left. The top left of your point statement shows some pertinent information about you. You will see your rank and full name, the last 4 digits of your social security number. Older versions will have the full SSN. And the name, address, identification code, and payroll number of your current National Guard unit. That's pretty simple to understand. Now let's move to the top right corner. This area contains a great deal of information that is often overlooked by service members. The first 2 items are simple enough. They are the date the statement was prepared and the reason for doing so, which is usually upon request. Next, we see a lot of acronyms, codes, and numbers. This is usually a point of confusion for service members, and as a result, this information is often ignored. This is actually a very important section. The third line in the top right corner says AYE, Alpha Yankee Echo. This is the anniversary year ending date. In the National Guard, retirement years are called anniversary years. Just keep that in mind. To translate, it means the date on which your unique period for earning retirement points will end. Keep that in mind. The anniversary year is not a calendar year or a fiscal year. It is different for every service member. This is something to keep in mind when determining whether or not you will have a good or qualifying for retirement year or not. The first 2 digits are the month, and the second two are the day. So that tells you what is the last day of your particular retirement or anniversary year. The next line says BASD. If you are in an active duty status, this will be an important bit of information for you. This stands for Basic Active Service Date. And if you are AGR or otherwise in an active duty status, there will be a date here. If you're a drilling soldier, there will not be a date here. The BASD reflects a compilation of all of your prior active duty service, and again, if you're on active duty, reflects the date your active duty service would have begun if it had been continuous service up to this point. For those active guard / reserve soldiers out there who may be reading this or listening to this, well, we'll have some good stuff for the bloopers reel, won't we? For those AGR soldiers who may be reading, did it again. For those active guard / reserve soldiers who may be watching this and are wondering when you will be eligible for a regular or active duty retirement, just add 20 years to the date of the BASD and you will have your answer. Don't worry about this date if you're a drilling soldier. It's not important for you. The next line is important to all service members, though. It says Notice of Eligibility and then says yes or no. This tells you whether a 20-year letter, or Notice of Eligibility for Retired Pay, as it's officially called, has been issued. Unless you have 20 years of qualifying service, this will say no. If the line says yes, and you do not have a copy of this letter, then you need to check your electronic personnel record. It should be there. If it is not, ask your full-time staff to request a copy from your state's Retirement Points Accounting Manager, or RPAM NCO. This letter will be important to you in the future. So please see my episode on the 20-year letter for more information about that. Next, we have highest grade held. This line should be either your current pay grade, or if you held a higher grade in the past, such as an enlisted man who was once a commissioned officer, then you should see that higher grade. If you have not been reduced for punitive reasons, that higher grade will show up. If you were reduced for punitive reasons, that higher grade will not show on this line. Here's an example of a pretty serious case. I know one individual who was a major and resigned his commission. He came back as an enlisted member and became a sergeant first class. That's an E7 for those in other branches. Later on, he was reduced to staff sergeant, or E6, for misconduct. A few months later, he was reduced again for misconduct to sergeant. His highest grade on his point statement now says E5 and not O4, and it will never show the grade of major again. So this is a good sign here to keep your noses clean or suffer these consequences. The final line on the top right corner shows two critical elements of information. The first is RPED, or Retired Pay Eligibility Date. For most of us, the date shown here will be our 60th birthday. For those of us eligible for reduced retirement age, the date should show when we will be eligible to start receiving retired pay before age 60. Please contact your full-time staff if you have qualifying service and your RPED, or RPED, still shows your 60th birthday. Next to the retired pay eligibility date, you will see a number and PDS, Papa Delta Sierra. This is the number of qualifying 90-day blocks of active duty you have. Each period should result in a 3-month reduction in your RPED. Again, if you have qualifying service and believe this number is incorrect, contact your full-time staff. I know that's a lot so far. Don't worry, it gets a lot easier and faster from here. Let's move on to the next line that starts with begin date. The next two columns are the begin date and end date. The first entry should be the time at which you first joined the military in any status. be that delayed entry or ROTC, Academy Cadet, or just straight active duty. It should show the first time you gained any sort of military status. Entries in these columns are usually, but will not necessarily, be in 1-year increments. Whether or not they are full years will depend on what you see in the next column, which is MMSI, Mike, Sierra, India. The next time frame, the time frame in each of the begin and end columns will change whenever the MMSI or MIMSI code changes. The MIMSI stands for Military Membership Status Identifier. In layman terms, it just means the type of service for each entry. Don't worry about trying to remember what all these codes mean. There will be a legend at the bottom or next page of your statement which will define those codes unique to you. Now we move into the meat of this lesson. The next 3 columns across the top of the headers only, because they are multi-line, but we'll just go across the first line of each one, are IDT, MEM, and ACCP. These stand for, respectively, inactive duty training, membership points, and Army Correspondence Course Program, and other distance learning type points. These 3 columns are collectively categorized as inactive duty training or IDT points. The IDT column shows your drill points during the given time frame. The MEM column shows the number of membership points you earned during this period, and you can earn up to 15 membership points for each full year in a reserve component. The ACCP column shows the number of points you earned from the completion of military distance learning courses divided by 3, since you can earn 1 point for every 3 hours of correspondence. Let's do an experiment. Add the numbers of the points from IDT, MEM, and ACCP in a given time frame on your statement. Now, keep these dates in mind. In fact, you might want to take a note here. From 1946 until 23 September 1996, write down 60. From 24 September 1996 to 30 October 2000, write down 75. From 31 October 2000 to 29 October 2007, 90. And from 30 October 2007 to the present, 130. If the total number of points you have for that time frame that you added up earlier is greater than the limit that I just mentioned for a particular span of time, then you will need to reduce your number of points down to whatever number I read off. These are point limits specific to the IDT category of points. Federal law has a limit on these for any particular time frame. It's, as you see, it's been going up over the years, which is good for us. But for those of us who enlisted in the dark ages, if you had more than 60 points a year on the inactive duty training side, you only were able to keep 60. And over time it has gone up. So this limit does not apply to other types of points though. The next column on our statement is the FHD column, which stands for Funeral Honors Details. While this is technically another type of IDT point, it is not subject to the point limit I mentioned earlier. This is to encourage people to participate in funeral honors details. Next we have the AD column. This displays the number of active duty points, such as your annual training or mobilizations points that you have earned. That one's pretty simple. The VS, Victor Sierra column, stands for verification status. This tells you whether this period of service has been verified by proper documentation or not. If you see a V, or Victor, the period is verified. If you see a B, Bravo, it has not been verified. Any points that have been earned in a period that has not been verified will not count. So that makes it very important to verify all periods of service that you have. Now we come to total career points and the total points for retired pay. These are shortened on the statement, so just read into it a bit. Total points for ret pay is what the second column says. The first column shows the total number of points you have earned for that particular period in any status, and the second shows the number of points remaining after the point limits have been applied. Only the total points for retired pay column will be used when computing what your retired pay will be. At last, we come to the last column, creditable service for retired pay. If the time period is a full year and you have at least 50 points for that year, you will see 01/00/00 in that column. If the time is less than a year and you have enough points prorated from 50 for that time to count, you will see however many months and days are creditable. If you have a full year and less than 50 points, you will see 00/00/00. This means that particular year will not count for retirement purposes. Keep in mind it still counts for pay purposes, so don't confuse what you see on your leave and earning statement with what you see on your point statement. They are independent of each other. If the time period is less than a year and your service continues on the next line, though, you will see .. // I know that's a lot of strange symbols to keep in your head, but don't panic. This does not mean your service is not counting for you. It simply means that your service time for that retirement year will continue on the next line. In essence, it means that your MIMSI code, which I mentioned earlier, has changed, and for some reason or another, due to that change, your service will now continue on the next line, and when you finish that retirement year, your points will be totaled up just like they were if it were a continuous year. Now we go all the way down to the bottom of the point statement, to the grand totals line. Here you will see the total number of points you have earned from active duty service, your total career points, and the total creditable points for pay purposes, and the total amount of service that is creditable for retirement purposes. Keep in mind that if the last entry above the grand total line has 2 dashes in the end date, the points from that line will not be included in the totals until your retirement year is complete or until you separate from service, whichever comes first. So that -- in the end date simply means you're in the middle of a retirement year and still accruing points. So those are not part of the grand totals in this line. Let's assume, for example, that you're currently serving and your total creditable service equals 19/11/15. That would be 19 years, 11 months, 15 days of creditable service. This does not mean that you need only 15 more days of service in order to have 20 creditable years. The retirement points database in the Army National Guard only recognizes full years of service. You will need to complete another full anniversary year before the database will recognize that you have 20 years of service, and then you will receive a notice of eligibility. So the short version of all that is the points database does not look at months and days at all unless you separate from service, and then it does a recalculation. Finally, we come to the military membership status identifier section, which will show you the meaning of all those little codes that you saw in the MIMSI column. After that, you will see another section for non-creditable periods of service. This section will include breaks in service and the types of service which do not count for retirement purposes, such as, in some cases, being an ROTC cadet. If you have service which qualifies for reduced retirement age, there will be additional sections which will show you the qualifying service and compute how much of a reduction in your retirement age you currently have. I'm not going to cover those today. I'm just doing the simple stuff. Hopefully that was simple and easy for everyone to understand. Believe it or not, we have come to the end. If that was not easy to understand, please comment below and let me know what was confusing. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. Please join me next week when I will cover how to compute retired pay the simple way. As always, thank you for joining me today, and of course, thank you for your service. If you liked what you heard on today's episode, then please go below and give it a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to this channel. Also, please let other people know about this channel and the information it can provide for them. If you have questions or comments, then have no qualms about posting them in the comments section below. Please remember the RC Retirement YouTube channel and the RC Retirement website are not recognized or endorsed by the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs, or any other government agency. The information presented in these resources are for entertainment and informational purposes only. Also, the content of either of these resources should not be considered financial or legal advice. Please consult with your own legal counsel, accountant, and financial planner before making any decisions based on what you have learned here. As always, thank you for watching the RC Retirement YouTube channel.